Today we're talking air quality, and specifically determining how you track air quality, what's important to track, and how you do it. So let's get into it. So indoor air quality in these times, and it's actually interesting because at this very moment, the city of New York has the worst air quality in the country, and it's because of fires in Canada. And unfortunately, that's not a unique situation to people in California. For the last few years, we've had multiple years where we've not been able to go outside without wearing masks because the outside air is so bad. It's like having giant fireplaces just dump all of their smoke into your house. So I'm sitting here today with Dave Wertel, who's the owner of Jake's House, and we're going to be talking what Dave has done in his house to make sure that his air quality is not only tracked, but that we're making sure we have the ability to clean that air after his house is already built. So Dave, tell me a little bit about not only why you're interested in air quality, but what you're interested in tracking and why.
Sure. So I am interested in air quality. I want to control the quality of air in my home. And in order to do that, I have to actually know what the quality is. I have to measure it. For me, that's a little bit like having a thermostat. You know, a thermostat, if you want it to be warmer, you set the thermostat warmer, and it's got a little thermometer inside of it, and it measures the temperature. And based on what the actual temperature is that it measured, it turns on your heater or it turns it off. I want something similar for a particle concentration in the house. So when there's a fire outside or just pollution in general getting into your house, or when you're creating pollution inside your own house just by burning something on the stove or cooking, creates these unseen particles flowing throughout the house that in some cases actually can be dangerous. And it's not too hard to measure that. Just like a thermostat, and turn on fans, turn on ventilation, increase the amount of ventilation, and filter the air in the house. So what I'm doing is I'm building what I call the sensor pack, which is essentially a thermostat for more than temperature. It measures the density of particles in the air that are created by pollution. It measures
what size particles?
So it will measure many sizes. You can buy small sensors that fit inside of a little thermostat box that can measure what's called PM 2.5, which I think stands for particle micron 2.5.
Yeah, it's the size of the particle. So the smaller the particle, the more deleterious or harmful it is to human health, because at 2.5 or below, they can actually start fitting in between the cells in your lungs and getting straight into your bloodstream. And then they can actually start causing, respiratory distress or heart issues or liver issues, or if they're
cancer
toxic,
or whatever.
Cancer, right?
Yeah.
So you're really trying to control those, but in order to control it, as you mentioned, you have to understand what it is.
Right.
Right. So that you're not trying to control something that's not there. Because that would just be a waste of energy.
Yeah, I have to know when I'm done cleaning the air.
Got it. Okay.
When it's clean enough.
Right. Okay. So 2.5. What else?
So VOCs, that's volatile organic compounds.
Right.
Those are also very easy to measure.
Right.
You just need a little sensor. Humidity, which is good to control, like in the bathroom, to prevent mold from growing. Let's see, I mentioned temperature. Oh, CO2. I'm building a passive house, and in the passive house, there's no uncontrolled ventilation.
There's less uncontrolled ventilation.
There's less uncontrolled ventilation. Fine. In order to make sure that our exhalation of CO2 doesn't build up too much CO2 in the house, I'd like to know, what is the CO2 level? Recently, I worked at home for a while, like many other people in the world, and I bought a little CO2 sensor to find out what the actual CO2 levels were in my living room as I was working there. And when I wasn't working in the living room, I found that it was, not too far off of the outdoor parts per million. The way they express the levels of CO2 concentration is parts per million. And in our atmosphere, we currently have about 450 parts per million of CO2 concentration. And if you just open up all your doors and windows, then the air comes inside the house from the outside, and your house inside will have that same concentration of CO2. But if you close the doors and windows and you're working there and exhaling, then that builds up the levels. And I wanted to know how much they were building up. And I found that while I was working there in my living room, they were building up to 1,100, 1,200. These are not considered to be healthy levels of CO2.
And did you feel an effect of that buildup of CO2?
Not, well, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. I mean, when I see the numbers going up, then...
Oh my God, I must be feeling really tired.
Yeah.
There's a lot of CO2 here.
I think there might be a little placebo effect,
Got it, yeah.
but I trust the meter.
Okay.
And I calibrate it once in a while so that I know, where it's getting its numbers. And I would like to be able to work indoors and not have that happen to me. And,
Sure.
and so in order to measure that, I would like to have a CO2 sensor in every room.
Right. So we're tracking all these things, CO2, you're tracking carbon monoxide?
I am, carbon monoxide as well.
PM 2.5, moisture. Now, normally, it's been a change in how we view indoor air quality, because when I was originally when I was originally trained in green building and passive house, the kind of solution to everything, there's a phrase: the solution to pollution is dilution, which means that if your indoor air quality, which is typically called at about 10 times worse than outdoor air quality, when the indoor air quality got really bad, just open the windows or you ventilate the house. But when the outside air is worse than the inside air, you can't do that anymore, right? Like, it takes away that entire solution to indoor air quality. So first of all, are you going to measure? Are you going to put one of your sensor packs outside?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so now you have the ability to realize maybe just opening a window or turning on a fan or the HRV is going to solve your problem, right? But if the outside air is absolutely horrendous, like it is in New York right now, where you're checking particle measures at 300, right? I mean, it's just insane. The sky is orange like it was here a few years ago. So now, instead of the kind of diluting your indoor air quality, you're actually having to do other choices for remediation. So what are those choices that you're going to, like, obviously filtration, you address the PM 2.5. For VOCs, and VOCs, volatile organic compounds, is a big class of chemicals which kind of gets labeled with this false narrative that it's always bad, right? Like, CO2 is a volatile organic compound. And it has so the definition by the EPA of a VOC is an organic compound, meaning it has a carbon chain, that undergoes, in the presence of sunlight, a catalytic reaction which produces smog. And smog is O3. It's ozone, really. And it's O3, so it's a highly reactive oxygen species that can be really bad for your health. So down low, ozone is really bad. Up high, it blocks UV light and protects the earth from the sun, right? So we do want to and so the kind of common refrain is that VOCs are any volatiles. So that can include perfume, cleaning sprays, farts, anything that kind of produces a gas and an odor, right? And so how are you dealing with VOCs in your house? Because you can't filter them.
Right. So the key is knowledge, knowing when I have a problem. I am hoping that by using good building materials and not doing not burning stuff inside my house, that I'm going to avoid having high levels of anything.
Right.
Hopefully, I won't have high levels of VOC, but it's important for me to know whether I do have that problem.
Right.
I know that it does happen, and I'm a curious person, and it probably won't be a high risk for me, but I'd like to know. I'd
Right.
like to track it, and I'd like to
Right.
see what things I do in my house have an effect on the levels of VOCs, CO2, and particles, whatever.
Right.
And by knowing that information, I'll know whether to open a window or increase the ventilation rate, things like that.
And to address VOCs in your house, we're planning on having the ability to put in what's called an activated charcoal filter in your air filtration system. And so an activated charcoal filter has a lot of highly reactive carbon molecules on it that actually attract and bind to VOCs and everything else that's a kind of a reactive chemical, and fix them so that the air going through that is largely denuded of kind of these reactive molecules. And so that's going to really address that issue. But I think it's really important to understand that first, knowledge is power, right? And that finding all of these things is really something that we all should all be doing, right? Now, you're building yours. You're not only building yours, but you're building the entire system, which is going to be the topic of another video. But you're building the entire system to monitor and regulate all this. You're tracking all that data, and then you're going to be able to program, because you're an electrical engineer, to be able to program all of the software around that to control the actual hardware in your house to make sure that you don't have to manually turn the fan on or manually open windows in your house to protect your health.
Yeah, this is something that is not really new. For example, you can buy a humidity-activated fan for your bathroom, and it's the same concept. It's got a sensor built into it that measures the humidity level in the bathroom, and it keeps the fan on and automatically turns it off. And you don't have to remember to turn on the fan or remember to turn it off.
That's called a humidistat, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Thank you. So there's this sort of new market of gadgetry for the house that you can buy that is automatable, that is connected to the network. And it's kind of fun for me to program that stuff. And I don't necessarily need a humidistat.
Right.
I can do that manually, but I can also write a program. And this is one of the reasons I get excited about building a new house, is because I can create a system that allows me to play with it, and that's just really fun.
So I'd like, Dave speaks about it like it's pretty easy, but it's pretty continuous that Dave goes like 3 or 4 levels above where the rest of us, the entire design and build team, are like, yeah, okay, Dave's got that. Like, we don't need to understand all the electrical stuff that he's talking about. So tell me, why didn't you is the reason you didn't buy a system because you wanted to play with it, not that it wasn't commercially available?
It's partially that
Okay.
I do like to play with it, but also philosophically, the systems that are available, they're what you call closed systems. The company that makes the controls is not anticipating anyone writing software to interact with it, and so that closes off my writing software to interact with it. And it also has the effect that if you buy into this product, that you have to stay with that company's product forever.
Right.
And one of the things that I did in my own career, which was, I think, in hindsight, very lucky, was I got into the open source revolution. Open source is when instead of a company keeping their program source code, as a secret, a trade secret, they release their source code so that other people can interact with it and write their own software, write modifications to it, improve it. That open source revolution happened kind of in the 90s, and people might have heard of the Linux operating system. This is an operating system that is open source that I've built my career on, and the sort of new market in sensors that you can buy sensors that'll measure just about anything. They all are programmable using Linux and using these open systems that allow any hobbyist with no particular access to the industry to write from scratch whatever they want as long as they can learn it. And with resources like YouTube, you can learn about what other people have done and pretty much bootstrap yourself into doing things that previously could only be done by buying a product. And so from a philosophical point of view, I like that sort of the democratization of access to these systems.
That's really awesome. So not just highly intelligent people can build these systems, but anybody who's interested in spending some time on YouTube and going out and kind of parting this together, kind of like the original home computer guys, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Just putting this stuff together and testing it and making sure that it works and, using it for whatever their minds can come up with.
Right.
That's awesome. So I think indoor air quality is something that we should all be paying attention to, whether you decide to do it like Dave and build your own system, or whether you're a hobbyist that is just starting out and learning. I think it's really important for us to understand what challenges that we need to address in our houses, whether you live next to a railroad or whether you live next to a busy freeway. They have different challenges as opposed to if you live in the middle of a farm, which has its own challenges with crop dusting and everything else. And so really paying attention to indoor air quality is going to be a key for this project and for every project that we build, and it should be a key for you. If you're interested in learning more about building science or following our projects, please hit subscribe as we show you how to build a better way.